Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our Victory Road World Cup of Pokémon VGC stream. This is day one of top 16, and Victory Road World Cup is sponsored by GG Tour, Metafi, and Elgato. My name is Evan, and I am joined once again by Jamie. We're going to jump into the last match of the day that we are going to feature, and this is the top right corner of the top 16 bracket. We've been featuring a lot of teams and players from the right side of the bracket, so there will be more tomorrow and on Sunday. But now this is France versus Italy, and we have two very strong players because these two players made top cut at Worlds recently.
Yeah, they were both able to make it into that top cut, and that's a very, very strong showing from any player. And yeah, we've got Hippolyte Bernards versus Daniele Spuntarelli, going to be a very, very good match to watch. We can see that nothing has happened yet so far between Italy and France, so this is going to be the game that is going to get that first game on the board for either of the teams. But some very, very strong players coming out from both of the teams there.
Yeah, almost all of Team Italy was at Worlds. Like I met a lot of these players personally there and kind of made friends. And notably, the players that made top cut were Flavio Del Pidio, Leonardo Bonanomi, and Daniele Spuntarelli. And from France side, these players are also not players that we can scoff at because they are really consistent in this series 12 format, particularly even in Sword and Shield. These players are just no strangers to these online league tournaments, and some of them actually I did meet them at Worlds, and it was really cool. Thomas, notably the player that saw so much success with the Shedinja, and Hippolyte as well, whom we're going to feature today. Notably, both players, like both teams, Italy and France, do have their versions of Shedinja, which is really interesting to see coming out from the EU region and following their the meta game in the EU region. So let's see what the players do with their scouting and how they prepare for this match against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. As we can see there, the World Championships top 16 for both of the players. Hippolyte Bernards able to get that second seed as well from the day two Swiss, and finishing in ninth place. Obviously, the best place to finish at Worlds, of course. And yeah, another round of really consistent finishes. You got a regional championship behind your belt for Hippolyte as well, and some good consistency coming out from Daniele as well. In their very first season, they were able to make top cut of the World Championships, which is a very, very impressive feat.
Yeah, like that's really cool coming out from Daniele, and he used the same team with Flavio. They used the team with the Porygon 2, Moltres, Gala, and Shedinja, and just both players being able to bring Shedinja all the way in at the world stage and get such a good achievement out of that. That's just like how impressive they are and how consistent they are in this format. But we don't see any Shedinjas here on stream today. All the ghost type slots have been taken by the 3 Mimikyus that we saw earlier.
Yeah, it seems so. Hippolyte not opting for the quote-unquote French rain that we've been seeing come out so consistently from him. Instead, going to be going with the 6 Pokemon that won the World Championships. But Daniele definitely going with what looks to be a counter pick there. Zekrom is a very, very strong Pokemon into Swordfish, especially the French rain version with that Shedinja, because it's got the Terravolt to completely ignore Wonder Guard as well. So it makes perfect sense that in this kind of format in the World Cup where you're trying to counter your opponents, the Zekrom is brought to this match.
Yeah, such a cool composition coming out with the Indeedee for Follow Me support, and also that Whimsicott that probably can have the option of fake tears, right? And also more importantly, speed control. Some interesting facts from my scouting is that Hippolyte played all 6 weeks of the World Cup thus far and brought Zacian Kyogre. 3 of those weeks he brought his very own Shedinja team, so this really does make sense from Daniele. But going into a different team now, I'm curious to see how both players adapt. As we do see the leads here, Hippolyte brings out Cataract's Shadow and Rillaboom, something you don't often see. And from Daniele's side, Whimsicott and Zekrom.
Winning Whimsicott and Zekrom was not really something I expected to see here on the stream, but here it is, and it is going to be very interesting to see if it can be very impactful against the team that won the World Championships nonetheless. So it's still quite an interesting position for both these players. You've got the fake out potential onto the Whimsicott with the Rillaboom, and that would have been able to put a stop to the Tailwinds. You could just follow that without any move that the Calyrex would want to go for at this point, but the Whimsicott's going to keep itself safe, switch out into the Incineroar. That's going to be able to shrug off any Astral Barrages launched off by the Calyrex pretty comfortably and get the Intimidate on the Rillaboom, but that's just going to switch out straight into the Zacian instead, and it's going to avoid the Intimidate since that Whimsicott switched out first. Is still going to get its Intrepid Sword boost up to +1 to be able to put on a lot of pressure here. Zekrom's not going to put on any pressure at all because it's going to be protecting itself from any of the attacks that come out, and that was the Will-O-Wisp coming out from the Calyrex, looking to burn that Zekrom and really damage its output, damage output there, but able to just protect itself and get the fake out pressure back on the field. That's not going to affect the Ghost type Calyrex though.
Yep, so Incineroar being able to provide some fake out pressure could be useful against the Zacian, but very interesting first turn from both players, trying to get into a good position with very smart switches, and Zekrom doesn't just pull the plug and go straight for a Dynamax. We still don't know whether it's physical or special, but Hippolyte wants to kind of keep it in check by going for the Will-O-Wisp, it seems. There could be a potential, like the Calyrex Shadow to maybe run Snarl to, keep special Zekrom in check, but Hippolyte seems to be trusting that this is a physical variant, as we do see the Zekrom switch out in place for the Kyogre, like Daniele reading that, Hippolyte might go for another Will-O-Wisp and kind of switching for that, and a double switch from Daniele to keep the Incineroar for later and bring the Whimsicott in right away. Let's see what the Zacian can do here.
Yeah, Zacian's going to have to do something quite nice here because the Will-O-Wisp hitting into the Kyogre is not going to be too impactful, and it's just Sacred Sword into what was the Incineroar. That's still a lot of damage into the opposing Whimsicott thanks to that critical hit, bringing it under half HP, but now that's a really, really nice switch in for Daniele. Getting that double switch, that means you can just click fake out, sorry, not fake out, the Tailwinds and the Water Spout very, very freely. There's nothing to stop that because the fake out isn't on the field like it was in that game 1, so they're very, very nicely switched around. The extra little chip of damage from the burn onto the Kyogre is going to reduce the damage of the Water Spout. That means that the Zacian probably would be able to survive that attack coming out, but something that definitely wants to be taken that is the Gastrodon that switched in for the Zacian.
Yep, so here comes the Tailwind, and it really does make sense to go for that Water Spout, but with that Gastrodon switching from Hippolyte's side, the correct Gastrodon, the blue one from Worlds.
Absolutely, yes.
Is able to get a special attack boost and probably help in Dynamax later. The Calyrex does logically have that sash, as we see in the meta quite often, and instead of going for Snarl, go straight for take the KO onto the Whimsicott, and that makes so much sense for Hippolyte to click Astral Barrage for this turn, and also to bring Kyogre down so that Water Spouts don't do as much damage later. But more importantly, Daniele has set up Tailwind for the team. With Whimsicott going down, it's able to get a free switch here.
It's going to be able to go into the Zekrom that would now outspeed the Calyrex to be able to put a stop to any of those Will-O-Wisps. Even the Kyogre would be able to pick up the knockout onto the opposing Calyrex at this point and allow Zekrom to get some massive damage into that opposing Gastrodon. It should be able to shrug off any of the attacks the Zekrom would want to go for, even something like a Life Orb Max Wormwinds. Gastrodon's still a pretty bulky slug, so it should be able to survive that attack, and then you'll be able to get some damage off. But with your boosted now power, thanks to that Water Spout hitting into the Storm Drain, you don't really want to be going for any Yawns with the Gastrodon because you're facing down a Pokemon that can very easily and very much want to click Max Lightning, so that would be very unsafe if you're going for the Yawn. Maybe just getting some damage down with the Gastrodon with the Earth Power, or even the Max Quake as well. Now that it's got the boost, it's going to be able to do some significant damage and be able to shrug off the attacks from the Zekrom pretty comfortably as well. That does look like it is going for the Dynamax here. You wouldn't really expect the Dynamax of the Kyogre in front of the opposing Gastrodon. There is going to be that Zekrom going for the Dynamax, hoping to do some massive damage to the opposing side of the field, and you've put a stop to that threat of the Winners because you now outspeed the Calyrex. Either of your Pokemon is able to just pick up the knockout on it.
Yeah, but it's a tricky situation for Daniele because he needs to think carefully whether to give the Gastrodon yet another special attack boost by going for that spread Water Spout or Origin Pulse, as we do see Hippolyte respond by Dynamaxing the Gastrodon, and that makes sense because Gastrodon is a ground type and does threaten super effective damage into the Zekrom and at the same time boost special defense. So Kyogre actually goes for Ice Beam instead of the spread water type damage to take that Calyrex out. Interesting that Hippolyte chooses not to switch, and it's I think it makes sense for this team, the way he's piloting it, being very bulky and being able to take attacks. Zekrom here goes for that Max Quake, preempting and boosting special defense for both sides, as we should see this Max Quake do a significant amount of damage into this Zekrom.
Yeah, that is going to... That's very, very nice chunk damage, given the fact that there was a Max Quake boost as well coming out from the Zekrom. But that pretty much confirms that it is going to be the special version of the Zekrom, because it doesn't get access to Earthquake. It's going to be Earth Power instead. So going to be hitting on this special side of the field. Very interesting Zekrom coming out there. But yeah, the Max Quakes from both Pokemon here, the Gastrodon and the Zekrom respectively, are going to be pretty impactful now, because you're facing down at least a Zekrom that carries some special moves and a special attacking Kyogre, and so the Gastrodon's going to be able to shrug off the attacks coming out from those pretty comfortably with its own Max Quakes now. So very, very nicely done going for the Dynamax with the Gastrodon there. A very nice chunk of damage into the opposing Zekrom. Probably going to be in range of Behemoth Blade at this point. You've still got another turn of Tailwinds to stall out, so that the Zacian can go for the Behemoth Blade without the Zekrom moving first and the Kyogre moving first as well. But at the same time, maybe the Zekrom's carrying the Dual Wing Beat to be able to have access to the Max Airstream, and if it does have access to that, then it'll be able to potentially put both the Kyogre and the Zekrom faster than the Zacian, even without the Tailwinds being set on the field. So a very interesting plays that can come out from either players here. The Zacian's just going to protect to stall out the Tailwinds. It could just go on the offensive because this Kyogre's been taken pretty low. It's going to be able to survive any of the water attacks that would come out from the Kyogre. It would have to be a double up from the Zekrom and the Kyogre, but then that just ignores the Gastrodon completely and is able to do some massive damage to the Zekrom. And now that the Whimsicott is KO'd as well, I'm kind of struggling to see an answer to this Gastrodon, especially if it just keeps Max Quaking up.
Yeah. So, wow, Hippolyte actually chooses not to switch in the Rillaboom, as he's showing us through the screen here, right, that the Grassy Terrain still has one more turn. Tailwind still has two more turns, so it does make sense to bring that Zacian in on this turn, so that the Rillaboom can threaten the Kyogre next time. So here, he chooses to bring the Rillaboom in to kind of save Zacian all the way towards the end game. But Daniele also, like, makes a little bit of a prediction and switches the Incineroar in, but okay, we haven't mentioned that the Max Quake from the Gastrodon earlier proc a weakness policy from this Zekrom, so very interesting team building, as the Max Wormwind is almost able to take the Gastrodon out, and wow, Zekrom is just so bulky, being able to survive this Max Quake coming out from this Gastrodon.
Yeah, that was a significant chunk of damage. I thought the Max Quakes were going to be able to allow it to shrug off a little bit better than that, but I guess Zekrom is just too strong with the boost that it got from that weakness policy. The Gastrodon is going to be able to boost itself up quite nicely as well. That's put the Zekrom very low. I was going to say potentially in range of Grassy Glide, but definitely not if the Grassy Rain has just disappeared that turn. That's not the ideal turn to disappear. Probably out of range of Grassy Glide anyway at that point. But yeah, a lot of damage coming out from that Zekrom, much more than I expected, and now it is very much still an answer to that Gastrodon. If it just clicked Max Wormwind once again into that Gastrodon, that will be a KO. If you click the Wormwind into the Rillaboom, that would probably pick up the knockout as well with those boosts. You just got to contend with the potential of a Zacian still switching in, because that would resist completely the Max Wormwind that could come out. Don't really want to be going for Max Lightning in this position into any Pokemon. Max Quake would still do a reasonable amount of damage, but probably not enough to pick up the knockout on the Gastrodon, given that it's got two special defense boosts now. You can pretty safely just go for whatever you want with the Incineroar, whether that's passing shot, fake out, or even just hard switch straight out into the Kyogre. That's absolutely fine as well. But the Zekrom probably wanting to go for a Wormwind here, and it just has to not catch the Zacian.
Wow, this is just crazy. Both players not opting to go for fake out with the active fake out from the Incineroar or the Rillaboom, and Zekrom actually goes for the Wormwind into the Rillaboom slot. So Hippolyte actually calls that right, because going for the Wormwind into the Gastrodon might even make sense to remove it from its last turn of Dynamax, so Hippolyte gets the call right, goes for the max quick, and is able to take the take the Zekrom out. Chat's been saying like they're trying to look for an Eternatus in the game, but the Zekrom is also quite impactful here, and it's quite amazing to see how this weakness policy Zekrom work. Unfortunately, goes down to the Gastron here, and Gastron still gets to remain on the field with relatively good amount of health and being able to heal back with leftovers.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a misstep coming out from Daniele. You needed to Whirlwind there, but not the Zacian switch in, and Hippolyte getting the better end of that, catching the Whirlwind perfectly with the Zacian switching in for the Rillaboom slot instead. So now the Gastron is sitting pretty comfortably. We'll have to see if there's a Dark type move coming out from the Incineroar, because potentially the Gastron's low enough that an Ice Beam and something like a Throat Chop or a Dark Lariat would be able to pick up the knockout on the Gastron. Yeah, because that's pretty low at this point. Ice Beam probably won't do it, given the 3 max Quake boost that it's got. But you still got to contend with the Zacian as well. Even if you're focusing down to be able to KO the Gastrodon, that's ignoring the Zacian and the Rillaboom that can very easily take the game as well. But if you ignore the Gastrodon, it's just going to be able to get its leftovers back up and just be unkillable once again. So it's still an incredibly awkward position for Daniele. The Max Whirlwind went into that Gastrodon, he would have actually been in a pretty strong position, because then you're facing down the Zacian and the Rillaboom. You've still got your Incineroar waiting in the back at that point. You've still got your boosted Zekrom. That would have been a very comfortable position for Daniele, but instead Hippolyte getting the right end of that turn and putting himself instead into that very strong position.
Yeah, such a strong position, and it's so difficult to remove the Gastrodon now, especially with this Rillaboom just switching in here at full health, being able to threaten the Kyogre easily. So Daniele kind of has to go back to the drawing board and think of how to adjust for game 2 and how to make better impact with that Zekrom. Wow, and Ice Beam actually goes into what was once a Zacian, but just isn't able to take out the Rillaboom, following up with a Flare Blitz, correctly calling the Protect from the Gastrodon, which does make sense, right? Because a Fake Out and Ice Beam should be able to kill the Gastrodon there, and Daniel actually finds a way to turn it back, but still, this Zacian is going to be too powerful from Hippolyte's side.
That was the play you need to make for sure if you're on Daniele's side of the field to be able to get back into that game, but it might still not even be enough. The Gastron's recovering the lefties, it's recovering the grassy terrain as well. The Kyogre's being chipped pretty low. You're going to be able to bring in your Zacian at full HP without being intimidated. The Kyogre's almost certainly going to be in range of even the fighting type attack coming out from Zacian at this point. Incineroar has going to struggle to survive that attack as well, because pretty much just go for Sacred Sword for the rest of the game. The Incineroar's taking little bits of chips, so it might still be able to survive if it's able to survive it naturally, but it'll be very close otherwise. And so Kyogre is still looking in a very awkward position because it can't go for the water type attacks if it wants to not boost up the Gastrodon even further that it's already got with the Storm Drain. So still a very nice position coming out from Hippolyte, even though that was a very nice play. They're going for the Ice Beam and the Flare Blitz into the Zacian slot from Daniele's side of the field. It's still looking pretty comfortable for Hippolyte.
Yeah, it really comes down to whether this Incineroar can survive the hit coming out from Zacian and do significant damage back with Flare Blitz. And then Incineroar kind of has to do an extra job to go for like another move into the Gastrodon and do as much damage as possible. So here comes the Sacred Sword, just easily able to take the Incineroar out with that +1 boost from Intrepid Sword. So Kyogre going for the Protect there, just maybe to scout out a little bit more information. We saw on the screen that this Gastrodon is kind of Edu's set where it runs Icy Wind, so you know if Hippolyte like slips out, he might reveal it, but no, it just goes easily for the Earth Power to do as much damage as possible from Stab.
Yeah, Earth Power was definitely the correct move to go for there. If the Incineroar was able to survive the attack, it would either go down to the Earth Power that the Gastrodon could go for, or even just knock itself out to the Flare Blitz recoil, which it would assumably be wanting to go for into the opposing Zacian, and now you just get to go for Sacred Sword once again and pick up the knockout on that Kyogre. So still, it was a very nice to play game from both of these players. Some nice plays coming out from Daniele, like the Ice Beam and the Flare Blitz into that Rillaboom switch in, but just that one misstep, I think the Zekrom, if it went for Wormwind into the Gastrodon instead, that would have been a really strong position for Daniele, because they've taken Hippolyte down to their last 2 Pokemon, that's Rillaboom and Zacian. You've got Incineroar in the back, you can switch it in and Intimidate, and potentially just keep doing that and switch it out and switch it in again. Instead, very, very nicely done, catching the max one with the correct slot for Zacian, and that was able to effectively from that point take the game, even though Daniele was pretty much playing perfectly from then on, and there wasn't anything to be done from that point.
Yeah, it was such an unfortunate like call to make, and I could also see a world where the Gastrodon switches into the Zacian instead, but like Hippolyte just got it right and is able to clinch that first game. Here we see I think same lead coming out from Hippolyte, but a change up from Daniele. Instead of leading Zekrom, now goes with Kyogre and Incineroar. Incineroar being able to threaten the Calyrex Shadow earlier, right, to be able to take it out. And interesting to not see Whimsicott at first, right, and probably saving the Whimsicott in the back for Tailwind.
Yeah, you don't always have to lead with your Whimsicott. You can bring it in at any point and click Tailwind. It doesn't have to be turn 1, so opting to go for the Kyogre and Incineroar, that I think makes a lot of sense into the Rillaboom leads, because you can just go for the Intimidate straight away onto the Rillaboom. It allows the Kyogre to be able to shrug off those attacks pretty comfortably as well. But you've always got to contend with the Gastrodon waiting in the back. We saw that really the best answer to the opposing Gastrodon was take a Max Quake or an Earth Power to get your weakness policy and then do some massive damage. But other than that, there's not too many good ways of breaking through the opposing Gastrodon, so you're going to have to slowly chip away at it, and that's even when it hits the fields. And it's not going to switch in at this point. It could have very easily done so, facing down an opposing Kyogre, but very, very safe play coming out from Hippolyte instead. Just a fake out into the Incineroar and an Astral Barrage, and Kyogre's Protect's going to allow it to survive a little bit of damage from this, or not take too much damage from this Astral Barrage, because it would have taken a bit of chip, but just getting some extra chip onto the Incineroar pretty much for free at this point.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see Daniele's thought process. In game 1, he also went for a Protect on the Zekrom turn 1, right? To kind of scout out whether Calyrex has access to that Will-O-Wisp or that Snarl. And here, instead of going for Snarl, Hippolyte just goes for the Astral Barrage, kind of expecting to do important damage before the Calyrex goes down. So a bit of a stalemate, but interesting to see how the second turn plays out, because there's so many options here with the Incineroar threatening good damage into the Calyrex Shadow, or could just go for a parting shot to get back into a better position.
Yeah, and you probably do need to get into a better position than this. You can get snarled by the opposing Calyrex, you can get grassy glided into the opposing Kyogre. At least the Incineroar isn't threatened itself too much at this point. Even if the Rillaboom has high horsepower, that's not going to be doing too much damage to the Incineroar because of the Intimidate. But there is a double Protect coming out from the Kyogre that did fail, so that's a lot of damage with the grassy glide. And then the follow-up of this Astral Barrage, it's going to be very close if it's able to pick up the knockout on the opposing Kyogre. It's not Assault Vest because it did go for Protect, and it is able to pick up that knockout, so that is going to be a Grim boost going over into the opposing Calyrex. There is no sash breaking at this point, so even if the Incineroar goes for an attack to break that sash, or go for a Dark type move to bring that Calyrex down to its sash, it would still be on the field, but its sash is still intact, so that's only a parting shot. At least you get the Calyrex back down to neutral and cancel the Grim. I mean, you've essentially just lost one of your restrictors for pretty much free.
Yeah, I think Hippolyte really caught Daniele on the lead, right? Being able to always threaten that Grassy Glide onto the Kyogre slot, and at the same time threaten Snarls to, kind of neuter the Zekrom if it comes in late. So Daniele really thought that going for the Double Protect on the Kyogre was the best play, and then switch Rillaboom out, potentially to bring Whimsicott back in to take control with Tailwind, but we don't see that happen, and the parting shot goes into the Rillaboom. Now the Zekrom comes in, and yeah, I'm curious to see what Daniele has in the back, and wow, it is that Whimsicott.
You can go for Tailwind now and outspeed the opposing Calyrex, but there's been no sash broken on the Calyrex. It's going to be able to go for probably not the Will-O-Wisp at this point. You've seen that the Zekrom has Earth Power, so you've got to assume it's going to be the special variant at this point. You can go for Snarl instead, so that would be able to put a stop to any of the damage that's coming up from the Zekrom. There's no weakness policy on it at the moment. You're probably not going to be activating the weakness policy anytime soon either, and not even targeting down that Zekrom with any of the attacks from the Rillaboom, just going for the straight up Astral neutral barrage. That was an attack from the Whimsicott, not going for the Tailwind, probably going for an attack to break the Focus Sash of the opposing Calyrex, but with that boost, not able to pick up on that Whimsicott. It's able to shrug off that attack because that parting shot of earlier bringing it back down to neutral, able to survive, and there is a special attack drop as well. So now this Calyrex down to -1 special attack, and that is a broken Focus Sash.
Wow, what an interesting turn of events. And like, this Whimsicott would not be a Pokemon that carries the Focus Sash because it's just so bulky. Like, Calyrex's +1 Astral Barrage really does a lot of damage. So very interesting team building coming out from the Italian side. And here Whimsicott will then be able to set up Tailwind and take control, but I'm not sure like how much impact this Zekrom can do, like in terms of its max moves. It really needs to go for stat next moves to take important KOs, because I'm not sure if even the Max Quick could even take out a Calyrex Shadow.
No, definitely not without the weakness policy boost. Maybe if the weakness policy was activated, but if Whimsicott it goes for a Moonblast into its own Zekrom to activate that would not be activating the Tailwind this turn, and you'll be outsped by the Calyrex. So it has to be Tailwind this turn to be able to outspeed. The Grassy Glide is going to be able to follow up into that Whimsicott, able to pick up the knockout on that Whimsicott. Now it was down into the red HP, and the Zekrom is able to attack before the Calyrex, before any of the damage mitigation can come out, and that is going to be a KO with the Max Lightning into the Calyrex. They're going to pick up the knockout and overwrite the Grassy Terrain, so the Grassy Glide no longer has priority.
Nice. Wow, this is just the beauty of Eduardo's team that he has constructed. Like, all this time just Calyrex and Rillaboom was led, but like, and so many turns went down, and finally then the Calyrex gets taken down, and Daniele is just down to 2 Pokemon left with Zekrom and Incineroar, so really needs to work very hard to maximize the turns coming out from this Dynamax Zekrom. So here comes the Gastrodon, the Pokemon that is really just the hardest Pokemon to take out from Daniele's side, and I'm curious to see whether Hippolyte just, you know, pushes the button and maxes straight away to get it over and done with, or still has because he still has so many options like to switch out and stall out this Dynamax to get into a better position in the end game.
And so you pretty much just need to get some Max Quakes into the Gastrodon at this point. It's going to be able to shrug off the Zekrom completely if it goes to Max Quakes. Just so long as you don't activate that weakness policy on the opposing Zekrom, you're pretty much sorted. The assumedly Draco Meteor won't be doing too much damage to the opposing Gastrodon. Max Whirlwinds will do a reasonable amount of damage, but if he gets any Max Quakes, you're going to be able to shrug it off pretty comfortably. And then as soon as we're down to the regular attacks, Draco Meteor will be getting weaker and weaker as you drop your special attack further. So just get some Max Quakes onto the Gastrodon, and you're pretty much sorted for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and it does make sense to Dynamax as early as possible and always get Max Quakes off, because you know that the Zekrom is most probably a special variant. But we do see Hippolyte choose to Dynamax the Rillaboom instead, I mean Gigantamax, and it's at -1 attack because of the Intimidate coming out from Incineroar, and probably like calling that the Incineroar might go for Fake Out instead. So Daniele doesn't want to repeat the same mistake, doesn't want to go for Max Whirlwind, so instead goes for Max Lightning into the Rillaboom. Notably, Incineroar went for Flare Blitz earlier than the Rillaboom, so this Incineroar is built faster, but just in the rain isn't able to do enough damage. If Rillaboom didn't Dynamax, it would still survive. So here comes the Max Quake, revealing the Sugar Berry onto the Incineroar, but Incineroar doesn't go down. I think the Gastrodon follow-up should be able to help.
Yeah, absolutely will, and that's going to be just Zekrom against the world at this point. Very, very important that the Max Quake was not able to pick up the knockout on that Incineroar. If it wasn't Chuckerberry, that would have KO'd the Incineroar, and then the Earth Power gets redirected into that Zekrom and activates the weakness policy, and then that would be a potential way back into the game, but it doesn't really look like there's going to be at all, because the Zekrom is still going to be in the Tailwind for a little bit, but it's in the Tailwind when it's not facing down the Zacians, so it's not going to be able to attack that Zacian before it gets off one of the powerful, maybe Behemoth Blades, or if it's carrying Play Rough, to be able to do the damage. But Zekrom really isn't going to be able to break through. Its weakness policy has not been activated. You should not activate its weakness policy at this point. Just stall out its Dynamax. Don't go for any Earth Powers. Go for Yawn in Electric Terrain. Don't go for Icy Winds. Protect is fine as well. You can go for some Max Strikes or the GMAX Drum Solo with the Rillaboom. Just don't activate the weakness policy and you're sorted.
Like, it's so interesting that Gastrodon's moveset always does super effective damage into the Zekrom there. So Hippolyte, trying to play as safe as possible, goes for the protect on the Gastrodon, not wanting to take unnecessary damage, and here comes a Max Strike, yeah, maybe to bring the Zekrom's speed down so that the Rillaboom can outspeed later. But with the Zacian in the back for Hippolyte, he's just in a really commanding position, and he just played really smartly to get up to this point. You know, keeping the Zacian in the back, always making Daniele guess, whether the Zacian will switch in and completely negate something like a Max Wormwind. So up all the way until this point, I think he can just start doing super effective damage already. I'm not sure.
You can get away with going for the ground type attacks at this point. It was more about stalling up the Dynamax of the Zekrom when you don't want to activate the weakness policy. Now when it's in its regular base form, if you get super effective damage into it, it's probably going to be in range of Zacian waiting in the back, so it doesn't really matter if you just go for on the offensive here. Hippolyte just playing it safe, just going for a double protect that did fail, doesn't really matter. The Zekrom is going to be picking up the knockout onto the opposing Rillaboom with that Bolt Strike that actually is going to be physical, so it's going to be somewhat of a mixed Zekrom coming out here because it has access to Earth Power and it has Bolt Strike as well, so not opting for a fully special Zacian. Might still even be physical at this point and just having that Earth Power to be able to get some max weights going, but now the Zacian has hit the field, it's still at full HP, it's probably going to be able to survive a Bolt Strike, even an Electric Terrain, it'll be pretty close. Zekrom's pretty strong, but you are able to do some massive damage first at this point. And Gastrodon still can just follow up at any point with an Earth Power to be able to get that last little bit of damage into the opposing Zekrom.
It seems like Hippolyte is really playing patiently here. From the screen, we do see there's a last turn of Electric Terrain. And forgive me, just now I saw the Incineroar move first, so I thought the Incineroar was built faster, but it was because Daniele still had full turns of Tailwind, and Hippolyte really played patiently to stall out the Tailwind, as we saw the message in the previous turn. So Tailwind is over, and both, you see, instead of Zacian going for an attack here, right, Hippolyte plays patiently to protect, so to stall out the Electric Terrain and not allow Zekrom to take the KO onto the Zacian, and even reveals Substitute here in this game 2, and that's just such an easy way to stall out the moves coming out from Zekrom.
Yeah, this game is very much over at this point. Substitute just a cherry on top at this point. If it was play rough over it, that could miss, and then you could miss over and over again, but Substitute is going to be a very nice way of stalling it out. The Electric Terrain's gone now, Yawns can't affect the Zekrom. You just get to put it to sleep at the end of the next turn. You can go for a double protect this turn if you wanted, but you could probably just get away with going on the offensive at this point, because it can only KO one of the opposing Pokemon, and see, it wouldn't even get the weakness policy activated before it would go to sleep, because the Zacian's going to attack first, then it's going to be the Zekrom. That was still amazing damage with the Sacred Sword. The Bolt Strike's not going to be enough, and then you Earth Power as the Zekrom falls asleep. So even if this was able to pick up the knockout, which it would have been in Electric Terrain if that was still up, then the Gastron's just going to be able to follow up with an Earth Power or two to be able to pick up the knockout. And it turns out it just needs one.
You don't see that every day on screen, the animation coming out from Bolt Strike. There's still that cinematic effect, and it did pretty impressive damage into the Zacian, all things considered, but still Zacian just proves to be the stronger restricted out of everyone, and it actually won Worlds, so yeah, it was able to take that game. But props to Hippolyte for playing that end game out cautiously, right? And that's something good to learn from, to always make sure that you have that end game in mind, and like the plan to move forward. And from Daniele's side, just unfortunate that he couldn't catch the French Rain team, but still being able to pilot the team very interestingly, and we can see like how Zekrom kind of makes an impact with kind of a mixed set and weakness policy, and that's very nice to see on stream.
Yeah, it was very cool to see the Zekrom for sure. Probably the matchup it seemed very heavily in the favour of Hippolyte's side of the field, given the tight matchup. It did seem like Zekrom was trying to catch the opposing French Trainer or Zacian, Kyogre, whatever it was going to be, because Hippolyte had used that so much. So that was pretty much a showing of a counter team attempt that did not pan out, unfortunately, because it did not face the team that you wanted to see. But that is the gamble that you always face. Zekrom is a very uncommon Pokemon that doesn't tend to be used too much. It's very much considered anti-meta, and if you try and catch the specific matchups, then Zekrom can do very well, but that was not the one it wanted to face, and unfortunately it was pretty much dropped to that World Championship winning team, once again showing why it was such a strong team.
So some historic moments after this match. So last year, in top 16, Italy and France faced up, right? And Italy beat France 7-0. But now France breaks that egg, and gets the first point against Italy for this year 2022 World Cup. At the same time, Daniele was undefeated in the first 3 weeks that he played, because Italy got top 8 last year, so they don't have to play the qualifiers. They had to play the group stage, and Daniele was at a 3-0 record with very interesting teams altogether. Like, he used different teams so that it's difficult to get scouted, but here just has to suffer from a loss against Hippolyte. Now it's at 3-1, and France is just having that glimmer of hope to be able to best Italy this year and move on instead. Stop Italy in its tracks, since Italy went so far all the way to second place last year.
Yeah, France have already done better than they did previously in that top 16, but I'm sure they will want to go further. So we will, of course, be keeping an eye on how that grouping develops. So that is going to be it for us for today, for this Friday. Of course, we do still have 2 more days for you for the top 16. So please make sure you are joining us once again on the Saturday and the Sunday for our streams. Please go and follow us on all the places, on the Twitter, on the YouTubes, where YouTube is where all the matches are going to be available as well. Follow us on Twitch. And thank you very much for sponsoring the Victory Road in GG Tour, Metafy, and Elgato. And that's going to be it from us for this Friday. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
So for tomorrow, the stream will be at 4 p.m. UTC. You will be able to see the schedule if you scroll a little bit down on Twitter. We will have matches from Canada, from Taiwan, US, Korea, and there's another match from Japan and Thailand again. So these are the matches that you can see on screen. So remember to tune in tomorrow at 4 p.m. UTC. You can see the players here. Some players are really strong. We've seen them online so many times, so you don't want to miss this.